Hey guys, tonight we're going to do something so brutal it'll make your morning alarm feel like a lullaby. We're diving headfirst into the life of a Roman gladiator, but not the Russell Crowe, fighting for glory kind of gladiator. No. I mean the real deal. The sweaty, blood-soaked, please, for the love of Jupiter, don't make me fight a bear gladiator. So before you get comfortable, take a second to like this video and subscribe, but only if you actually enjoy this content. Leave a comment telling me where you're listening from. Somehow, it's always 2 a.m. somewhere. Now dim those lights, turn on a fan for some gentle white noise, and get cozy. So you don't feel like a gladiator yourself. Ever wondered what it felt like to fight for your life in front of thousands of screaming spectators? What did gladiators eat when they weren't busy trying not to die? How did they sleep, if they ever slept at all? Would you survive a single day in the Colosseum, or would you be begging for mercy after your first round with a guy holding a big sharp stick? Well, congratulations. You've just woken up in ancient Rome. The year is 90 AD. You're in the gladiator barracks. Good luck, my friend. Welcome to the barracks, where the only thing more uncomfortable than the beds is the fact that everyone here is probably trying to kill you. You'll share your space with men from all walks of life, criminals, prisoners of war, and the occasional guy who thought being a gladiator would be a great way to get in shape. Spoiler alert, it's not. Think of this place like a dorm room if everyone's sleep schedule is dictated by the sound of swords clashing and lions roaring. The walls are grimy and damp, the air thick with sweat, and the scent of unwashed bodies, and the only light is a few flickering torches that hardly make a dent in the darkness. Let's break it down. You're crammed in here like sardines, with barely enough room to breathe, let alone stretch out your sore muscles after a long day of training. In fact, the best way to describe the barracks, think of a crowded subway car, but instead of commuters, you've got men who've seen too much blood, too many battles, and a lifetime's worth of suffering. The beds are just pieces of straw on the floor, so forget about that fluffy mattress you've been dreaming of. But you'll be lucky if you get any sleep at all. The sounds of people sharpening their swords, arguing over food rations, and the occasional fight breaking out in the middle of the night mean rest is a luxury you'll never get to experience. Some nights, the barracks are dead silent. You'll lie there, eyes wide open, wondering whether the sounds you're hearing are just the wind or if someone's about to shank you in your sleep. But on other nights, you'll hear men crying out in their sleep, reliving their past battles or the ones they've yet to face. You'll hear whispers of those who tried to escape and failed, their bodies thrown into the arena as examples of what happens when you defy your fate. This place, it's not for the faint of heart. The men around you, they're not here because they want to be. Some are criminals sentenced to fight for their lives, while others are prisoners of war, captured from foreign lands and thrown into the brutal world of gladiatorial combat. Then, there's the odd man who thought being a gladiator would be an opportunity for glory. Maybe he's seen too many fancy parades or heard stories about the heroism of gladiators winning their freedom. These are the guys who usually don't last long. After all, if you think being a gladiator is just about putting on a shiny helmet and looking cool, you're in for a rude awakening. The barracks are where you'll form bonds with these men. At least you'll try to. Some of them might become your friends, your brothers, even your allies in the ring. But trust me, nobody trusts anyone too much. Everyone's got their own agenda here, and in the end, it's every man for himself. The weak are weeded out, and those who remain are left with one singular purpose: to survive the next fight. Oh, and let's not forget about the food. You're not getting a 3-course meal here, pal. You'll be lucky if you get a small bowl of porridge, served lukewarm and mostly tasteless. It's not much, but it's enough to keep your stomach from growling too loudly in the middle of your next battle. And don't even think about asking for something better. You're a gladiator now. Your job isn't to feast. Your job is to fight, and you'd better be good at it if you want to stay alive. And while we're on the topic of staying alive, let's talk about the real fun, the other gladiators. You'll meet some men who've been here for years, men who have fought in countless battles and survived more than their fair share of wounds. They're grizzled veterans who've seen it all, and they're not exactly in the mood to share their tips for success. In fact, most of them won't even speak to you. They don't want to make any new friends. Why? Because in this world, it's better to trust no one. Your survival depends on your ability to keep your head down, keep your mouth shut, and let your actions in the arena speak for themselves. But here's the thing about being a gladiator. As much as you try to survive, you're still part of a show. You're not just a man. You're entertainment for the masses. And that, my friend, is what makes this whole thing so much worse. It's not just the physical toll, it's the mental one too. You're stuck in a world where your value is measured in bloodshed and spectacle. Your life is no longer your own, and the only escape is through the arena. In the barracks, you learn one thing quickly. Survival is a game, and the stakes are your life. Keep your head down, make some friends, but not too many, and never forget why you're here. To entertain and hopefully stay alive long enough to see another day. Your alarm, a loud horn, your breakfast, a little porridge that could double as concrete, and don't even think about hitting snooze, because today you're either fighting or eating dirt. The smell of iron and sweat fills the air as you drag yourself out of bed. Imagine the worst gym locker room you've ever been in. But add blood and the distant sound of cheering crowds. That's your reality now. You can't escape the feeling of dread creeping into your bones as you force your stiff body out of bed, preparing for another day in the gladiator barracks. No time for morning stretches, no leisurely cup of coffee. You've got exactly 5 minutes to gather yourself before the horn sounds again, signaling the start of another brutal day. You stumble across the cold stone floor, your feet sticking to the gritty surface as you try not to trip over the bodies of your fellow gladiators, who are either still passed out or already getting ready for their own miserable routines. Some of them are muttering prayers, others sharpening their weapons, and a few are just staring into space, mentally preparing for whatever horrors the day might bring. There's no time for small talk, and if you try to engage anyone in conversation, you'll just get a few grunts in return. Everyone's too focused on their own survival to worry about how you slept or what you had for breakfast, if you even got breakfast at all. The porridge, if you can call it that, sits in front of you, lukewarm and thick as tar. It looks like something that could have been scraped off the bottom of a dirty pot, but at least it fills your stomach, even if it doesn't actually provide any nourishment. You can barely taste it. The texture is all wrong, like trying to swallow a brick. You choke it down quickly, knowing that a full stomach could mean the difference between being able to swing a sword properly or collapsing from exhaustion in the middle of a fight. But no matter how bad it tastes, you force yourself to finish it. After all, what's the alternative? You've heard the rumors about what happens to the gladiators who don't eat, those who faint from hunger during a match. You'd rather take your chances with the mystery porridge. But as soon as you're done, there's no time to reflect on the horrors of your breakfast. You hear the call of the horn again, a sharp, shrill sound that echoes through the barracks like a death sentence. It's time to get moving. The sound of swords clashing and the roar of other gladiators fills the air as everyone scrambles to get into formation. There's no gentle waking up here. There's no slow morning where you can sip your coffee and check your phone. It's fight or die, every single day. As you get dressed in your ragged armor, you can feel the weight of it on your body, the metal pieces digging into your skin in all the wrong places. But you don't have time to complain. You've got to be ready. The noise of other gladiators getting ready, the sound of their boots stomping on the ground, fills the barracks as everyone starts preparing for whatever hell is waiting outside. You look around and catch glimpses of their faces. Some are confident, some are terrified, but all are resigned to their fate. The reality of the gladiator's life is that no one gets out without scars, either on their body or their soul, and as you walk toward the arena, you can already hear the distant roar of the crowd. They're not there for you, though. They're there for the spectacle, the blood, the violence. And you're just the person providing it. Every day, you walk into that arena, hoping to make it out alive, but never knowing for sure. Maybe you'll be the one to get the glory, or maybe you'll be another forgotten name. It's all a game of chance, and the odds are never in your favor. The morning routine might seem simple on the surface, but every step is a reminder of how little control you have over your life now. You're just another piece in the grand, brutal machine of the Roman games. And as the horn blows once more, you know that today could be your last, but that's just part of the job. Training is rough. If you think a spin class is tough, try a session with a veteran gladiator who's not afraid to use a sword. Your instructor, a guy who's already seen enough deaths to fill a few funerals. Every swing of the sword feels like a reminder that you might not make it out of here alive. The good news? You're getting fit. The bad news? You're also getting bruised, cut, and possibly dead. The first day of training is an eye-opener. You thought you'd be lifting weights and doing some light sparring to work up to the big stuff, right? Nope. You're thrown right into the deep end, swinging a sword like it's the only thing standing between you and certain death. You barely have time to adjust before your instructor, who looks like he's seen 100 battles, none of them ending in anything remotely resembling mercy, tells you to start swinging. The sound of metal hitting metal rings through your ears as you clumsily try to keep up, your muscles burning with each attempt. Every time you mess up, you get a sharp reprimand, or worse, a bruise from your sparring partner's sword. If you thought your workout at the gym left you sore, get ready to learn what real pain feels like. Your instructor, he doesn't care if you're sore. He doesn't care if you're crying, bleeding, or wondering why you ever thought gladiator life was a good idea. All he cares about is whether you can fight and whether you can survive. There's no time for sympathy, and the only thing that matters is how well you can hold your own in a fight. The blows come fast and hard, and soon you realize that you'll have to learn quickly if you want to make it through this. The training is less about technique and more about survival. You could have the best form in the world, but if you're not ready for the real deal, you won't last long in the arena. and don't even think about going easy on anyone. You're all competitors here. If you don't show that you're ready to take on the world, you'll be quickly replaced by someone who is. The barracks are full of men who've trained longer than you and aren't afraid to remind you of it. You'll see them in the corner, whispering about past fights and the best ways to kill your opponent before they even realize they've been bested. Some of these men are ruthless, and their skills are honed with years of blood and sweat. You're just getting started. The weight of the sword in your hand is a constant reminder of your new reality. At first, it feels heavy and awkward, like you're carrying around a boulder instead of a weapon. But as the days go by, your hands start to get used to it. Your grip tightens, and your movements become more fluid, though never without the sting of a mistake. You'll get nicked, scraped, and sometimes outright slashed. Every wound is a lesson. Every bruise is a reminder that you're one swing away from death. But strangely, after a while, you start to get used to it. You start to move more like a warrior and less like a deer in headlights. You start to understand the rhythm of battle, the quick jabs, the defensive blocks, and the sudden surge of adrenaline that kicks in when you're facing an opponent who's just as determined to survive as you are. The worst part? The anticipation. You're not just training for some distant battle. Every practice is a reminder that you could end up in the arena tomorrow, facing down a beast, a man, or even a gladiator who's twice your size and 3 times as skilled. Each swing of the sword might be your last. It's a sobering thought, and it's something you have to live with every day. You can't afford to be afraid. You can't afford to hesitate. The moment you do, you're dead. And so, day after day, you train. You spar with the best and learn from the worst. You get faster, stronger, but also more jaded. The glamour of the arena, the idea that you'll be fighting for glory, starts to fade away, replaced by the harsh reality that this is just a job. It's a job where you're constantly risking your life, where the stakes are higher than anything you could have imagined. You start to question if it's worth it, if all the pain and bloodshed are worth the fleeting moments of victory. But here's the thing, you don't have a choice. You've committed. You're in this now, and the only thing that matters is whether you're ready for the fight of your life. So you keep training, you keep swinging, and you pray to the gods that somehow you'll be the one left standing when the dust settles. Here's the thing about the Colosseum. It's like a rock concert, except instead of a band, you have men fighting to the death. And instead of screaming fans, you've got a mob that's begging for blood. The roar of the crowd fills your ears as you step into the arena. But don't get cocky. The only thing worse than losing is losing to a guy with a bigger sword than you. As you stand there, the ground beneath your feet is gritty, dusty, and stained with the blood of countless gladiators before you. You can feel the heat of the midday sun beating down on your neck, making your armor feel even heavier than it already is. Sweat pours down your face, stinging your eyes, but you don't dare wipe it away. You can't afford to let your guard down, not even for a second. The air smells of iron, sweat, and something else you can't quite place. Fear, maybe? You're not sure, but it's suffocating. The crowd? Oh, they're loud. Far louder than you ever expected. You thought you'd get used to the noise, but the reality is that the cheers and jeers never quite fade into the background. They're always there, like a constant hum in the back of your mind. Some cheer your name, but most just want to see a spectacle. Some even chant for your death. It's like being the star of a show where the ending is up to fate and no one's rooting for the hero. The mob is fickle. They want blood and they'll settle for nothing less. You're not fighting for glory here. You're fighting to survive the day. The first few moments are surreal. You stand in the middle of the arena, trying to get your bearings. The crowd is roaring, and you can't even tell if they're cheering for you or against you. The noise blends into one indistinguishable wave of sound, like static on an old radio. The only thing you can focus on is your opponent, someone who's probably been doing this longer than you have, someone who's got more experience, more ruthlessness in their eyes. Your heart is pounding in your chest, and your sword feels like a dead weight in your hand. You try to steady your breath, but it's hard. Your body is trembling, not from fear, but from adrenaline, pure, raw energy that's making it almost impossible to think clearly. The crowd wants a show, and you're about to give it to them, but not in the way they think. The worst part? You don't know if you're the main event or just another act in a long line of brutal entertainment. There's no script here, no rehearsed moves. The only thing you can count on is your training. The same grueling sessions you went through back in the barracks. The good news is that you've learned how to fight. The bad news? So has your opponent. And they've been here longer. The moment the signal is given, everything shifts. Your opponent lunges, and you barely have time to react. The clash of swords is deafening, the sharp ring echoing through the arena. Your muscles scream in protest as you raise your shield just in time to block the blow. You can feel the force of it travel through your arm, your entire body shaking with the impact. Sweat stings your eyes again, but you can't afford to blink. You can't afford to look away. The fight seems to drag on, but at the same time, it happens in a blur. Every move you make, every strike, feels like it's happening in slow motion, yet you can't catch your breath. The crowd's cheers blur into one long, incoherent noise, but their expectations are clear. They want death. They want destruction. You can feel their anticipation building, their excitement growing with every swing of your sword, every dodge, every step you take toward survival. But that's the thing about fighting in the Colosseum. You're not just fighting your opponent. You're fighting the crowd, too. The pressure to perform, to give them a show, is relentless. You're not just a gladiator. You're a performer. If you don't put on a good show, if you don't make the crowd cheer, you might as well have never fought at all. You've seen it before. The gladiators who lose their nerve. They freeze, hesitate, and then it's over. A slow, painful death met with the indifferent roar of the crowd. You can't afford to be that person. You can't afford to hesitate. And then, the moment comes. You see an opening, a chance to strike. You raise your sword, your heart racing as the crowd holds its breath. With everything you have, you lunge, your blade cutting through the air. You feel the sharpness of your strike as it connects with your opponent's chest. They stagger, their eyes wide with shock, and for a moment, everything stops. The crowd erupts. Some cheer, some boo, but you don't care. You're alive, and that's all that matters in this moment. But as the dust settles and the roar of the crowd echoes in your ears, you realize something. This is the Colosseum. There's no winning here, only survival. And no matter how many times you step into that arena, the price you pay is the same. A piece of yourself dies with every fight, and that's the real battle. Let's talk weapons. You've got your basic sword, a shield that's probably seen better days, and a helmet that feels like a metal pot on your head. The good news? These weapons will help you stay alive. The bad news? They're heavy, awkward, and you'll likely find yourself wishing you'd picked up a career in accounting instead. The sword? Oh, it's fine. If by fine you mean it's about as balanced as a drunkman trying to stand on one leg. It's longer than you thought, but the weight is all wrong. Imagine trying to chop wood with a 2-ton hammer. It's not just awkward, it's an absolute workout. Every time you swing it, your shoulder aches, and your wrist feels like it's going to snap. But this is your weapon of choice, the one you'll use to protect your life. A few swings in, and you're already thinking you might have preferred a day job in the laundry room. At least the only thing heavy there would be your laundry. And then there's the shield. It's big, bulky, and about as useful as a soggy piece of cardboard. It's supposed to protect you, but in reality, it's more like a glorified pot holder. The thing is so heavy, it pulls your arm down like it's trying to drag you to the floor. Every time you try to lift it, you feel the weight in your shoulder and back, but it's the only thing standing between you and a sword aimed at your face. The shield becomes an extension of you, except that extension weighs more than your hopes and dreams. It's not exactly the noble defender of Rome feeling you had imagined, but don't forget the helmet. Ah, yes, the helmet. If you thought the shield was a pain, just wait. This thing is a masterpiece of Roman engineering, except not in a good way. It's heavy, uncomfortable, and too tight in all the wrong places. Wearing it feels like someone put a hot frying pan on your head, and the metal constricts around your skull like an overzealous headband. You can't hear anything clearly, and your vision is limited to a small slit in the front. The first time you put it on, you're convinced they've just stolen your personality and replaced it with confusion. It's like wearing a tin can. Good luck trying to focus on the fight when your helmet's pressing into your brow and every movement feels like a game of how long can you stand this before passing out. But hey, at least your armor fits, right? Well, kind of. It's made of metal plates and leather straps, designed to protect your vital organs, but also designed to make you wish you'd skipped leg day forever. These plates are stiff, heavy, and creak with every movement you make. Imagine walking around in a suit of armor that's constantly trying to cut off your circulation. It's not a sleek, shiny piece of fashion. It's a full-body reminder that you're a walking target for anything and everything that comes your way. Every time you take a step, it feels like a battle in itself, just to move. But here's the deal. These weapons aren't here to make you feel comfortable. They're here to make you feel vulnerable, just like everything else in the gladiator life. Because that's the thing about weapons. They're not just tools. They're constant reminders of your mortality. Every swing of the sword reminds you that the only reason you're still breathing is because you're not the one who's been pierced by it. The shield? It's the thing you hide behind when you're hoping the other guy misses. And the helmet? Well, it's there to protect your head when you're lucky enough not to get knocked out cold. Every weapon you hold in your hands is a symbol of survival, but it's also a symbol of the absurdity of your situation. You can't fight with grace when you're encumbered by a shield that feels like a refrigerator door strapped to your arm. You can't be a hero when your sword feels like a blunt instrument of chaos, incapable of delivering anything but a clumsy swing. But somehow you make do, because as a gladiator, doing anything but making do means you're dead. So, yeah, the weapons suck. They're not what you thought they'd be. They're heavier, more awkward, and infinitely less glamorous than the movies make it seem. But here's the kicker. You don't need them to be pretty. You just need them to keep you alive long enough to make it to tomorrow. Because, in the arena, survival isn't about finesse. It's about brute force, and the willingness to push through the discomfort, swing after swing, until the other guy's sword isn't the one that's lodged in your chest. This is the moment you've been dreading. As the horn sounds, you know you're in for a rough time. You're facing a man who's probably better at this than you, and the crowd is loving every second of it. Your job, stay alive. But with each swing of your sword, you start to wonder if that's even possible. The air is thick with tension as you step into the arena, every muscle in your body screaming with anxiety. You've trained for this moment, sure, but no amount of training prepares you for the reality of facing someone who's here to kill you. You glance around the arena, thousands of eyes fixed on you, waiting for you to give them a show. The roar of the crowd is deafening, but it doesn't quite drown out the pounding of your heart in your chest. You try to steady your breath, but it's hard. You've been here for a few minutes, and it already feels like the longest moment of your life. Your opponent stands across from you, weapon in hand, eyes locked on yours. He's got the kind of confident swagger that only comes with experience. You can see it in the way he holds his sword. He's no rookie. He's been through this before. And you're just trying to figure out how to survive the next few minutes without ending up in a heap of broken bones and blood. Every instinct in your body is screaming at you to run, but there's nowhere to go. The only way out is through. The signal is given. The sound of the horn echoes through the arena once more, and that's your cue. You grip your sword tight, bracing for the first strike. Your opponent moves fast, too fast. Before you know it, he's already swinging his blade at you. You raise your shield just in time, feeling the force of his blow vibrate through your arm. It's like being hit by a freight train, only the train is a guy with a sword and no interest in giving you a break. You stagger back, trying to regain your footing, but he's relentless. It's one swing after another, each one faster and more precise than the last. Every time you block, you feel your arm grow heavier, your muscles more fatigued, and the sweat, it pours down your face, stinging your eyes, making everything even harder to focus on. Your sword feels heavier with every move. You're exhausted, but you can't stop. The crowd doesn't care if you're tired. They don't care if you're scared. They want to see you fight, they want to see you bleed, and if you're lucky, they'll want to see you win. But if you're unlucky, they'll cheer just as loudly when you die. You're just another body to them, another moment of excitement in a long, blood-soaked history of gladiatorial combat. It's sickening when you think about it, but you can't afford to think too hard. You've got a fight to win. Your opponent is getting closer, the gap between you closing with every passing second. You're running out of room, out of options. You can feel the pressure mounting. Every time he swings, you wonder if this will be the blow that ends it all. You wonder if your body will be the one to make the journey down the blood-slicked sands of the arena. But you can't let that thought take root. Not now. Not when you're still breathing, still fighting, still alive. And then, out of nowhere, you find your opening. A quick sidestep, a shift of weight, and suddenly you're in position. Without thinking, you strike. The sword slashes through the air, faster than you thought possible, and you feel the satisfying thunk as it makes contact. Your opponent stumbles back, his eyes widening in surprise. He wasn't expecting you to fight back. He wasn't expecting you to have the strength to land a hit. For a moment, you think you might actually have a chance, but the fight's far from over. He recovers quickly, eyes narrowing, and you realize that the moment you thought was a victory was just another step in a much longer battle. Your body aches, every muscle screaming at you to stop, but there's no stopping now. You've started the fight, and you'll finish it one way or another. The crowd grows louder, urging you on, but also urging your opponent to fight back harder. You hear them screaming, their voices blending into one giant wave of noise. It's all so surreal, like you're trapped in some nightmare where your only job is to keep swinging, keep blocking, keep surviving. But there's one thing you know for sure. This isn't about winning. This isn't about glory. It's about survival. In this arena, you don't get a trophy. You don't get a medal. All you get is another day, another chance to fight. And then, at last, it happens. Your opponent falters. He makes one mistake, one misstep. You seize it, your sword moving with the speed of desperation, and with one final decisive blow, you end the fight. The crowd erupts in deafening applause, but all you can hear is the ringing in your ears. You've survived, but as the cheers echo in your head, you realize that you've only won this round. There's always another fight waiting for you, always another day in the arena, always another chance to lose it all. But for now, you're alive, and that's enough. Let's talk about the people watching you. They're not there to cheer you on, they're there for the show. You're a gladiator, which means you're entertainment. If you're lucky, they'll cheer when you win. If you're unlucky, they'll cheer when you die. You're a spectacle, a living, breathing soap opera, and you're the one who has to make it entertaining. It's hard to describe the feeling of walking into the arena with thousands of eyes fixed on you, not because they care whether you live or die, but because they're waiting for the next bit of drama. You're just the latest episode in their reality TV show, but with much higher stakes. And much like any good reality show, you're going to be judged not on how well you fight, but how well you perform. So if you're lucky enough to live through the battle, make sure you put on a good show. The crowd's mood swings faster than a chariot ride, and you have no control over it. 1 minute, they're roaring with excitement, on their feet, cheering you on as you take down your opponent. The next minute, they're jeering and booing as you barely manage to block a swing. You're only as good as your last move. The pressure to keep them entertained is relentless, and the worst part? They'll forget about you as soon as you leave the arena. If you manage to live through it, you might get a few nods of approval, but the applause is fickle, fleeting. They don't remember your name. They remember the blood, the violence, the drama. If they see you alive, they'll just be wondering how long you can keep that up before you end up in the dirt. Imagine being a performer with no script and no director, but an audience that demands constant entertainment. You can't take a break. You can't stop fighting and say, "Hey, can we do that again?" Because your life is literally on the line. If you fail to impress, if you make one wrong move, the crowd will turn on you in an instant. If you falter, they'll be more than happy to watch you get slaughtered, because that's the ultimate spectacle. The Romans didn't come for your glory. They came for your blood. And don't think the crowd doesn't know how to get under your skin. They can be cruel, and they will make sure you know it. They'll shout insults at you, mock your every move, and make you feel like the lowest of the low. Their cheers won't be for you. They'll be for the show you're putting on. They'll love the drama, the gore, and the twisted entertainment of watching you and your opponent tear each other apart. It's not personal, it's business. And in this case, business means fighting for your life. The worst part? You don't even know who you're fighting for. Are you fighting for your freedom, for survival, or are you just fighting for the amusement of a bloodthirsty crowd that couldn't care less about your struggles, your pain, or your fear? You'll never really know, because in the Colosseum, everyone is expendable, even the crowd. They'll cheer you on one moment, then forget you ever existed the next. But let's be honest, if the crowd weren't there, if there weren't thousands of eyes watching your every move, would it be as exciting? Probably not. The gladiator's job isn't just about staying alive. It's about making sure that the audience stays glued to their seats, waiting for the next bloody twist. If you fail to keep their attention, if you don't give them the spectacle they've come to see, you're nothing. You're just another lifeless body in the dirt. So as you stand there, bloodied and battered, with the crowd's roar ringing in your ears, you know one thing for sure. They don't care if you live. They just want to see the show. And as long as you're still standing, as long as you're still putting on the performance of your life, they'll keep cheering. But the moment you slip, the moment you show any weakness, the moment you fail to keep the drama alive, they'll cheer your death just as loudly as they cheered your fight. It's a sick reality, but it's the truth of gladiator life. You're not a warrior, you're a performer. You're not fighting for glory, you're fighting for their amusement. And whether you live or die, as long as you keep them entertained, you'll have done your job. The real question is, can you survive long enough to make it through the next fight? Because in this arena, the show always goes on. Ever fought a lion? No? Well, you're about to. The beasts are an unfortunate part of your gladiator career. Lions, tigers, and bears, oh my, are frequently unleashed into the arena. But don't worry, there's no training for this, just a whole lot of praying that you're faster than the other guy. When you first step into the arena, you think you've seen the worst it has to offer. A few sweaty men with swords, maybe a quick battle, and then you can all go home, right? Wrong. The real horrors of gladiatorial life aren't the men you fight, but the beasts they throw at you when they're bored of seeing you bleed. Lions, tigers, and sometimes the occasional bear are released into the arena like some sort of twisted game show, and you're the contestant who's about to get mauled. There's no preparation for this. Sure, you've trained with swords and shields, but no one ever taught you how to face a lion. There's no lion fighting 101 class in the barracks. When you're standing in the middle of that arena, trying to ignore the jeers of the crowd, all you can hear is the thundering of your own heartbeat, a constant reminder that this might be your last day on Earth. The first time you see a lion, it's almost unreal. The creature's size alone is enough to make your knees shake. You've seen lions before, maybe in the markets or in the palaces of wealthy Romans, but seeing one up close is something else entirely. It's not just the size of the beast that rattles you, it's the eyes. Those eyes. You can see the hunger in them, the bloodlust. It's as if the animal knows exactly what it's here to do, and it's more than happy to do it. You are nothing but prey. And then it happens. The gate opens, and out it comes, fur rippling, muscles coiling, teeth bared. The crowd roars in excitement as the lion lumbers into the arena, and for a moment everything goes still. The air is thick with tension, and you can feel it in your bones. You start to wonder if maybe running away would be a better idea. But there's nowhere to run. Not here, not when the whole point of this is to see you face down something that wants you dead. You've got a sword, sure, but what's a sword going to do against something that can tear you to pieces in seconds? The lion charges, and instinct kicks in. You raise your shield, but it's not enough. The lion is too fast, too strong. It slams into your shield with a force that sends you stumbling back, your knees buckling as you struggle to keep your balance. You've never felt fear like this before. The thought crosses your mind that you might be dead before you even have a chance to fight back. But then, you remember one thing. You're not alone. The other gladiators are there with you, and they're just as terrified. Everyone is scrambling to survive. Some run for cover, others brandish their swords, but all of them are hoping for the same thing, that they can be the one who doesn't get eaten. It's every man for himself, and you quickly learn that it's not about fighting the lion. It's about surviving long enough for someone else to get the beast's attention. The lion isn't interested in your fancy swordplay. It's interested in one thing, blood, and it'll do anything to get it. You can hear its growls, its claws scraping against the sand as it circles, looking for its next victim. You try to move, but the lion is too fast. It charges again, its jaws snapping shut just inches from your face. The only thing that saves you is a well-timed swing of your sword, but it only grazes its fur. It's not enough. Nothing's enough. At some point, it becomes clear. You don't fight the beast. You try to outlast it. You don't need to kill it. You need to make sure it's too distracted by someone else to care about you. The crowd is eating it up. They want blood, and they want it now. Every minute feels like an hour. Every second you survive, you know the odds of making it out alive are getting slimmer. But you don't have a choice. You can't stop. You can't give up. Eventually, the lion is taken down. Maybe it's another gladiator who's quicker, luckier, or just a little more ruthless than you. Maybe the beast tires, or maybe it's distracted long enough that someone gets the upper hand. But when it's over, all you can think about is how close you came to being another pile of mangled flesh on the sand. The crowd is ecstatic. They cheer, they scream, they demand more. But you're left standing there battered, bruised, and wishing you could feel your legs again. You've survived the lion. You've survived the beasts. But it's only a matter of time before another one is released into the arena. And next time, maybe you won't be so lucky, because in the Colosseum, the real question isn't whether you can fight the beast. It's whether you can outlast it long enough to make it to the next round. So you've survived the fight. Good for you. Now it's time to get patched up. Maybe you've got a nice gash down your side, or maybe your arm's hanging at a weird angle. Either way, there's no doctor coming to help. Instead, you'll rely on someone who's probably as injured as you are, because that's how they do things in ancient Rome. Get used to it. The battle's over, the crowd's still cheering, and all you can feel is the searing pain in your side, your leg, your head. Pick one. You try to stand tall, but your body is screaming at you to just sit down and rest. But there's no rest here, not for a gladiator. The show must go on, and the next fight could be hours, days, or weeks away. So you shuffle off the arena floor, bleeding and exhausted, trying to avoid looking weak in front of your fellow warriors. But even you know, deep down, you're a mess. You don't get to win every fight without paying the price. So what happens next? Well, don't expect anyone to throw you a parade. The moment you leave the arena, you're basically on your own. There's no medical tent with a team of clean-handed doctors waiting to patch you up. Instead, you're hustled to the back of the Colosseum, where you're greeted by a fellow gladiator who's probably just as bloody as you are. This isn't some well-groomed healer with a soothing touch. This is a guy who's been through the same thing as you, only he probably doesn't have the energy to care. He's got a role to play, and it's the same one you've got. Survive. First things first, someone has to inspect the damage. If you're lucky, the wounds are superficial. A cut here, a scrape there. But more often than not, you've got something much worse. Gashes that run deep, bruises the size of shields, or dislocated joints that refuse to go back in place without a bit of pain and a lot of pressure. But there's no time for painkillers. You're not in a spa. You're in a gladiator barracks. So the guy tending to you looks at your wounds with a grim expression, grabs whatever ragged piece of cloth is nearby, and starts working on you with all the gentleness of a horse plowing through a field. And the treatment? It's a mess. You don't get stitches here. No, that would be far too civilized. Instead, you're looking at some rough bandages, maybe a splash of vinegar to cleanse the wound, which only stings like fire, and a few gruff words from the guy helping you, like, it's not that bad. You'll survive. It's less healing and more, don't bleed out on my watch. You can feel the sticky residue of your own blood drying on your skin as they wrap up your injury in a way that doesn't make you feel like you're being cared for, but more like you're a project they're finishing up so they can move on to the next guy. Your dislocated arm, well, good luck with that. If it's bad enough, they'll try to pop it back into place. No fancy doctor tools here, just a fellow gladiator's hands and maybe a couple of strong men to help. They'll pull on your arm like they're trying to open a stubborn jar, and the pain, well, let's just say it's enough to make you question your life choices. But there's no time for tears. There's no time for gentle care. You'll be back out there in the arena before you even have a chance to catch your breath. And while all this is happening, you'll probably hear the sound of other gladiators being treated in much the same way. Some of them have wounds far worse than yours, yet no one really complains. Everyone's too focused on staying alive. The few who do scream out in pain are quickly hushed by the others, who know that there's no use in showing weakness. Weakness gets you killed, not just in the arena but here, in the dark corners of the Colosseum's back rooms. Once your wounds are patched up, barely, you're sent back to the barracks. You don't get a bed to lie in or a pillow to rest your head on. You don't get to lie down and relax. No, you get a corner in the barracks, a piece of straw, and the lingering smell of sweat and blood that will haunt you until the next battle. You'll rest as much as your body allows, but you can't sleep too deeply. Tomorrow, or the day after, you'll be back in that arena, ready to fight again. The cycle continues. The wounds you've just received aren't the worst part of being a gladiator, though. They'll heal, or at least you'll learn to live with them. But the real pain, the real cost, it's the mental toll. Every time you get patched up, you're reminded that you're disposable. You're just another gladiator, just another body that will be dragged back into the arena. The pain in your side might fade, but the memory of what you've gone through will linger long after you're back in the ring. In ancient Rome, healing isn't about making you better. It's about getting you back out there. And you, well, you're just part of the show. The average lifespan of a gladiator? Shockingly short. Some sources say it's as low as 20 years. That's right. Your career's over almost as soon as it starts. You can't even retire early like a modern athlete. When you're dead, you're dead. The Colosseum doesn't offer retirement plans, but at least you'll have a story. If anyone's around to tell me, it's a sobering reality. The moment you become a gladiator, you're signing up for a life that's lived at the edge of death. Sure, you might think you've got some time before it all catches up to you. Maybe you've got a few fights under your belt. Maybe you've survived the worst of it. But here's the thing. No matter how good you are, the odds are stacked against you. Every battle is a roll of the dice, and in the Colosseum, the dice are loaded. You don't get to pick when your luck runs out. The truth is, you're not meant to last. You're part of a brutal entertainment industry, a cog in the machine of Roman entertainment. The Romans want action, they want blood, they want drama. And once you've given them everything you've got, once you've fought enough battles, put on enough shows, and earned enough cheers, you're discarded like yesterday's news. No golden retirement days here. No relaxing by the pool with a cold drink in hand. You're not even given the luxury of dying in peace. You die in the arena, and that's it. Every gladiator knows the score, even if they don't like to admit it. When you're thrown into the ring, you're not just fighting for your life. You're fighting against the inevitable. Sure, you might get lucky and survive a few battles. You might even get a few cheers, maybe even a small bit of fame. But sooner or later, you'll face someone faster, stronger, and more experienced than you. The life expectancy of a gladiator is measured in the number of battles you can survive, and each one gets you closer to the inevitable. Your body starts to give out long before your spirit does. The constant bruises, some cuts, and broken bones are a given, but it's the toll on your mind that's just as damaging. Every fight takes something out of you, not just physically, but mentally. You start to lose track of the victories, the losses, the faces of the men you've killed or who have killed you. Eventually, you forget what it's like to just be a person. You're a machine, built to fight and die. If you make it out of the Colosseum alive, you're lucky. But even then, you're not free. You've been branded, broken in ways that can never be fixed. And then there's the constant fear. You never know when your number's up. Every battle could be your last. You could step into the ring one day and find yourself facing a beast, a man, or an opponent so much better than you that it's a miracle you made it past the first round. You don't get a choice in the matter. You just fight. If you survive, you fight again. If you don't, well, you're just another body for the crowd to cheer at. It's the fear that eats at you. You might be on top today, but there's always someone younger, faster, and more brutal waiting to take your place. The Colosseum doesn't care about you as a person. It doesn't care about your hopes, your dreams, or the family you might have left behind. It only cares about the show. You're a prop in a grand spectacle, and once your usefulness is up, you're replaced. The only thing that lasts longer than the blood and sweat is the memory of the show you've put on. But even that fades away as soon as the next gladiator steps up to take your place. There's a certain tragic beauty in the life of a gladiator. You're a star for a short time, but that time is fleeting. The glory is never as sweet as it seems. The cheers from the crowd are loud, but they don't make the pain go away. You get a brief moment of fame, but that moment is always overshadowed by the dark reality of the next fight. The Colosseum doesn't remember the weak or the forgotten. It only remembers those who were willing to die for the entertainment of others. And once you've outlived your usefulness, you're forgotten. You'll never make it to old age. You'll never retire. But maybe, just maybe, you'll get a chance to live a little longer than the other guy. And when your time finally comes, there won't be anyone to mourn you. Just the next gladiator stepping up to take your place, hoping for just a little more time before their own inevitable end. Gladiators don't just fight other gladiators. No, they fight beasts, criminals, and occasionally each other. These spectacles are designed to keep the crowd on their toes. Every fight is a bloodbath, and you're just another contestant in a contest where everyone loses. The Romans knew what they were doing when they created these games. They didn't just want a few men in armor clashing swords. They wanted chaos. They wanted violence so extreme, so shocking, that the audience couldn't help but be glued to their seats, screaming for more. And for the gladiator, that means you're constantly facing the unexpected. You never know what's coming next. One moment, you're locked in a fight to the death with another man. The next, you're forced to face an animal, perhaps a lion or a bear, whose only goal is to rip you apart. The one thing you know for sure, whatever happens, it's going to be brutal. The animals are some of the worst parts of the spectacle. They're not there for sport. They're there to kill. They're massive, unpredictable, and they don't care about anything other than their hunger. A lion doesn't care if you've been a gladiator for 10 years. It just sees you as dinner. The crowd loves it, of course. There's something about watching a man fight for his life against a wild beast that taps into something primal in them. And as for you, you just pray that your sword is sharp enough and your feet are fast enough. Because when you're up against a lion, there's no room for hesitation. You don't get a second chance. But animals aren't the only opponents you'll face in the Colosseum. Criminals, too, are often thrown into the mix. These aren't just ordinary criminals, though. These are men who've been sentenced to death, sent to the arena as punishment for their crimes. Some of them are hardened murderers, others just thieves, but all of them are dangerous. They don't care about the rules of combat. They only care about surviving, and that means they'll fight dirty. They'll do anything to avoid being killed, and that can make them unpredictable. Sometimes they'll fight with the ferocity of a caged animal, using any means necessary to get the upper hand. The worst part? Some of them might even get more cheers from the crowd than you do. After all, their fate is sealed. They're just here to entertain, just like you. Then there are the times when you face fellow gladiators. You'd think that fighting someone on your level would be easier. After all, you both know the rules of combat, right? But that's the problem. The moment you step into the ring with another gladiator, it's not about survival anymore. It's about proving who's better. And the stakes are higher than ever. When you fight another gladiator, there's no mercy. You both know how to kill, and only one of you is walking out alive. This isn't just a fight for survival. It's a fight for respect, for dominance, for a place in the history books. And in a world where death is around every corner, the last thing you want is to lose to someone else who's been through the same hell you have. The worst part of these spectacles? The unpredictability. You never know what's coming next. One day you could be thrown into a fight with another gladiator. The next, you might find yourself fighting a wild animal. The crowd doesn't care what you've trained for. They just want to see blood. It's a game for them, a spectacle. For you, it's life and death. And when you're fighting for your life, nothing is predictable. No matter how many fights you've survived, there's always the possibility that this one will be the end of you. You start to learn that it's not just about skill. Sure, you need to know how to fight, but you also need a bit of luck. You need to be in the right place at the right time, and you need to be able to outsmart your opponent, whether it's a lion or a fellow gladiator. You learn to use the environment to your advantage, to think on your feet, and to adapt to whatever madness is thrown your way. Because in the arena, there are no guarantees. And as the crowd roars with each kill, each moment of terror, you start to realize something else. You're not just a gladiator. You're part of a machine, a system designed to keep the blood flowing and the crowds entertained. You're nothing but a cog in the wheel of a monstrous spectacle that thrives on death. You'll fight again. You'll bleed again. And if you're lucky, you'll survive to fight another day. But in the end, you're just one more act in a show that never ends. The only question is, how long will you last? Gladiators didn't just fight for their lives, they fought to entertain. The crowd expected drama, tension, and above all, death. The pressure to put on a good show could sometimes be more deadly than the fight itself. The unspoken rule: always leave them wanting more. It's easy to think that being a gladiator is all about skill, fighting, training, honing your body to perfection. But in reality, it's about far more than just surviving. You're not just a warrior, you're a performer, a part of a grand spectacle where the only thing that matters is how well you entertain. If you're lucky, the crowd will cheer for your victory. But if you're unlucky, they'll cheer when you're down on the ground, gasping for breath, begging for mercy. The gladiator's code isn't written down anywhere. It's an unspoken understanding. It's understood that every fight is a performance, and your life is the price of admission. The crowd wants blood, and they want it in the most dramatic way possible. A swift, clean kill doesn't get the job done. No, they want a struggle. They want tension. They want to see you face death head on, but they also want to see you rise from it, even if only for a moment. That's where the real danger lies. When the crowd is entertained, they feel empowered, alive even. But when they're bored, they become cruel. And nothing fuels that cruelty more than the gladiator who doesn't live up to expectations. If you're just another fighter who swings a sword without flair, you'll be forgotten. If you're lucky, they'll still give you a quick death. But if you're unlucky, they'll make sure you suffer. In the arena, it's not about just surviving. It's about surviving with style. If you can make them believe you're about to die, then you'll be a hero. If you can make them gasp in awe as you strike down your opponent, you might just win the crowd's love. But let your guard down, hesitate for a second, and they'll turn on you faster than a lion in heat. You might be the one that gets cheered as your life bleeds out in front of them. The worst part of all this? You know it. You can feel it in your gut every time you pick up your sword. If you don't entertain, if you don't put on a good show, then you might as well be dead already. Every fight you enter is a chance to earn your survival for another day, but it's also a chance to get your name remembered or erased. The crowd can make you a legend. They can make you a god in their eyes, someone whose name will echo through the ages. Or they can forget you, leaving you just another lifeless body in the dirt, quickly replaced by someone younger, faster, and more brutal. And so you learn the tricks of the trade. You learn how to fight with flair. A little showmanship goes a long way. You drop to your knees for dramatic effect, only to spring up and land a killer blow. You twirl your sword in the air, daring the crowd to gasp. You fight with passion, with fire in your eyes, because the crowd doesn't care about your skill. They care about the drama. The more blood you spill, the more they cheer. But at the same time, you can't spill too much blood too soon. You've got to keep them hooked, keep them guessing, Let them see a few moments of weakness, a few close calls. Let them feel the tension, like they're on the edge of their seats. It's a fine balance. One misstep, and the crowd might turn on you. A fight that's too quick, too easy, and they'll lose interest. But if you drag it out, let them savor the moment, let them see the struggle, then you might just earn a few more days of life. You might even walk out of the arena with more than just your body intact. Maybe you'll win a few fans, a few favors from the wealthy patrons in the stands. Maybe you'll get a little glory, a little comfort. But all of that is secondary to the most important thing, surviving the day. And you'll do anything to survive. You'll play the part. You'll be the hero, the underdog, the desperate man fighting for his life. You'll make the crowd believe you're the one they've been waiting for, the one who'll give them a fight they'll never forget. You'll win them over, even if it means putting your life on the line. Because in the Colosseum, there are no second chances. The only thing that matters is the show you put on. Entertain, survive, and hope that you can do it all again tomorrow. If not, well, the crowd will move on to the next gladiator. But you'll be remembered, for better or worse. Everyone wants to be the crowd's favorite. The problem? To get there, you've got to make the crowd love you. That means showing off, performing stunts, and taking some serious risks. If you're good, you might get a spot in the big leagues. But if you're not, well, good luck making it past your next match. The crowd in the Colosseum isn't just there to watch you fight. They're there for the thrill, the drama, the spectacle. Gladiators are like movie stars to them, and the bloodier the performance, the better. But here's the catch. You're not just fighting for survival. You're fighting for their affection. You're not just trying to stay alive. You're trying to be unforgettable. And that means you've got to give them something they can't get anywhere else. Something that will have them chanting your name long after the fight is over. At first, you'll try to get by with just your skills, your swordplay, your defense, your ability to stay alive. And sure, that'll get you through a few rounds. But here's the harsh truth. Nobody remembers the quiet gladiator who just does his job and walks away. They don't care about your quiet victories. The crowd wants excitement. They want to see you do things that make them gasp, that make them lean forward in their seats and wonder if you're about to die, because that's what keeps them coming back. So how do you become the crowd's favorite? You take risks. You let them see the fear in your eyes. You take that extra second to look like you're about to lose, to give them that dramatic near-death moment. It's all about the performance. One moment you're on the defensive, your sword raised just in time to block a death blow, and the next, you're charging at your opponent, sword flashing in the sunlight as you take the fight to him. You don't just want to win, you want to do it in a way that makes them feel like they're part of the story. But it's not just about looking good in the ring. It's about the stunts, the flourishes, the wow factor. You've got to keep things exciting. You need to be unpredictable, just like the animals and the beasts you're up against. Maybe you swing your sword in a way that looks like it's about to miss, only to come back around and take your opponent's head off. Maybe you make a show of dodging, making the crowd think you're out of breath or about to collapse, only to pull out a surprising counterattack. The key is to make them think they're watching something special. Because let's face it, if you're just good at fighting, they'll forget you as soon as the next gladiator steps into the ring. It's also about timing. You've got to play to the crowd, read their mood. If they're getting bored, you need to spice things up. A well-timed taunt, a dramatic pause in the middle of the fight, Even a wink or a salute can shift their focus back to you. You're a performer, not just a fighter. The crowd doesn't just cheer when you win, they cheer for the spectacle you create. It's like being in the spotlight, with 1,000 voices yelling for you to keep going, to keep delivering. And the better you do, the more they'll demand. They'll start to expect more from you. They'll want bigger moments, flashier moves, and more of the drama they crave. But here's the thing. The pressure to be the crowd's favorite is enormous. Sure, you might win a match or two with some flashy moves, but if you're not careful, you'll burn out. Keeping the crowd's attention isn't easy. One misstep, one fight that's over too quickly, and you're forgotten. You've got to keep performing at a high level every single time you step into the arena, and if you can't do that, well, good luck getting a second chance. You'll see it happen all the time. Gladiators who burn bright for a short while, giving the crowd everything they want, only to fall out of favor when they can't keep up with the demand. The crowd's favorite is always changing. One day, it's you. The next, it's the guy who's been training just a little longer, or the one who pulls off a stunt that's even more daring. But if you want to stay in the spotlight, you've got to keep performing. You've got to give them something they can't resist. Because in the end, being the crowd's favorite isn't about skill alone. It's about showmanship. It's about knowing how to make them laugh, make them gasp, and make them remember your name. If you can do that, you'll last a little longer in the arena. If you can't, well, you'll just be another forgotten fighter, another body lost in the sands of the Colosseum. So you've done it. You've fought in the Colosseum. You've faced lions, tigers, and maybe even a fellow gladiator. But there's one thing you didn't expect. You're not leaving the arena alive. That's right, my friend. The reality of the gladiator life is grim. You either win or you die. The moment you step into that arena, you know the stakes. You might tell yourself that you're just going to give it your all, that you'll survive, but deep down, you know the truth. You're disposable. Gladiators don't get happy endings. There's no grand victory, no celebration, no long life in the sun. For the majority of gladiators, death is the inevitable conclusion to their brutal careers. And you're no different. Whether it's a spear through your side, a blow to the head, or the jaws of a wild beast, death is always lurking, waiting for its moment to strike. The crowd might cheer you on, they might scream your name, but when it comes down to it, you're just part of the show. You can be as talented, as skilled, and as charismatic as you want. But the reality of the Colosseum is this. The longer you survive, the closer you get to your final fight. The odds are never in your favor. Every time you step into the arena, the only thing you can be sure of is that someone won't be walking out at the end. It might be your opponent, it might be you, but someone will fall. And the worst part, you never know when it'll happen. Sure, there are gladiators who last for years, carving out a name for themselves in the annals of Roman history. But those men are rare. Most gladiators last only a few battles before they meet their end. And even if you do manage to survive longer than most, you're still walking a razor-thin line between life and death. You'll fight beast after beast, man after man, always hoping that today isn't the day you slip up, the day you make the mistake that costs you everything. You start to feel it after a while, the weight of the arena, the knowledge that every fight might be your last. Every fight becomes a test of endurance, not just physically, but mentally. The longer you survive, the more your body breaks down, the more your mind becomes numb to the horrors around you. But the crowd, they're always hungry for more. They don't care if you're tired. They don't care if you're scarred. All they want is blood. All they want is a show. And when you can't provide that anymore, when you're too injured or too slow to perform, that's when you're expendable. That's when the end comes. In the final moments of a gladiator's life, there's no grand hero's send-off. There's no swelling music or slow-motion victory. There's just the heavy feeling of inevitability as you face your opponent one last time. Maybe you fight back with everything you have left. Maybe you don't. Maybe you're too tired to care. But in the end, it doesn't matter. Death comes for all gladiators, and the arena does not spare its champions. The crowd may cheer for your bravery, but in the end, it's all just a spectacle. You're not a man to them. You're just an act. And when you fall, when your blood hits the sand and your body crumples to the ground, it's over. There's no great reflection on your life, no family to mourn you. Maybe a few will whisper your name, but those whispers will fade. The next gladiator will take your place, and the show will go on. The Romans have short memories, and the crowds are always ready to move on to the next act. The sands of the Colosseum will soak up your blood, but they won't care. Your death isn't a tragedy to them. It's just another page in the story, another fighter who fought for glory and fell. And that's the reality of the gladiator's life. It doesn't matter how many victories you rack up, how much glory you earn, or how many enemies you defeat. The Colosseum is always ready for the next challenger. It's always hungry for more, and when you're no longer able to fill that hunger, your story is over. You fought hard. You gave it everything you had. But in the end, the Colosseum takes what it wants, and you're just another name on its long list of forgotten warriors. You either win or you die, and even if you win, you still lose. In the world of gladiators, there are always those who stand out. Maybe they've won 100 battles, or maybe they're just really good at avoiding death. But here's the kicker. Sometimes, the best gladiators were the ones who made it out of the arena alive. If you're lucky enough to survive, you might just walk away with some wealth and fame. But that's a big if. Let's face it, being a gladiator isn't exactly a career with longevity, and even the best can fall at any moment. The average gladiator's life expectancy is barely more than a few years, but for those few who defy the odds, the rewards are unimaginable. These are the men who rise from the dirt of the Colosseum and make a name for themselves. They aren't just remembered as weapons of war, they become legends, their names whispered across Rome as symbols of strength, cunning, and survival. These gladiators didn't just fight to the death for entertainment. They fought to live, and sometimes that was enough to turn them into heroes. Take, for example, a man like Spartacus. He wasn't the only one, but he's one of the most famous gladiators who escaped the cycle of violence. Spartacus led a massive slave revolt against Rome itself, turning the tables on his would-be masters and showing the world that a gladiator, a man seen as nothing more than a tool for sport, could fight back, not just with his sword, but with his mind and his will. His name became synonymous with rebellion, and his life was far more than just an entertainment spectacle. But not every gladiator gets the chance to escape, to lead armies, or take on the Roman Empire. For most, surviving long enough to retire, or at least win a few times, is the dream. Some make it big not because they can defeat every opponent, but because they know how to survive. These men learn the art of staying alive, taking calculated risks, and knowing when to strike and when to retreat. In a world where fighting is everything, sometimes the best fighter isn't the one who wins the most, but the one who can keep getting back up, no matter how many times they're knocked down. These gladiators weren't just skilled fighters, they were tacticians, understanding the rhythm of the arena. They knew when to play to the crowd, when to pull off a daring move, and when to save their strength for the final strike. They became crowd favorites, not by sheer brutality, but through their ability to entertain, to make each battle feel like an epic struggle. The crowd didn't just cheer for victories, they cheered for the drama, the rise and fall of the fight. Gladiators who understood this were the ones who made it out alive, with a bit of fame to boot. But it wasn't just about the fights. Gladiators who gained fame were often offered the chance to become more than just fighters. Those who had enough victories might earn themselves a sponsor, a rich patron who could afford to pay for their freedom. Wealth, fame, and even the chance to retire on their own terms. These were the prizes for the lucky few who made it out of the arena in one piece. They could be given land, offered opportunities to train others, or even take a political role in the Roman world. But none of this came easy. For every gladiator who earned their freedom, there were countless others who never saw it, dying on the sands of the arena without so much as a second glance from the empire they served. Then there's the reality of life outside the arena. Gladiators who survived long enough to win their freedom often faced the challenge of transitioning from being a living weapon to a free man. Many were scarred, both physically and mentally, from their years in the Colosseum. They didn't just have to navigate a world they had never been a part of. They had to come to terms with their past. Would they be seen as heroes, or just as men who had once been slaves and fighters, forever marked by the violence they had endured? For some, that question was easier to answer than for others. For those who succeeded in making it big, it was more than just survival. It was about redefining their identity, taking back their lives from the Roman system that had once owned them. Their fame, earned in the blood and sweat of the arena, became their ticket to a new existence. They might have walked away with wealth, freedom, and status, but their victory was bittersweet. They knew the cost of their success, the friends they had lost, the blood they had shed, and the brutal nature of the battles they had fought. But the fact that these gladiators made it out alive, whether through winning, survival, or sheer luck, was a testament to their extraordinary resilience. They weren't just fighting for the crowd or for the empire. They were fighting for themselves, carving out a place in a world that had already decided they were nothing more than tools. And for the few who made it to the top, the rewards were beyond what most could ever imagine. In the end, it's not about how many fights you win, but how many chances you get to fight at all. For the lucky ones, a gladiator's life could be brutal, but it didn't have to be short. It's a rare thing, though, a hero in the arena who makes it big and survives long enough to tell the tale. Gladiators weren't just fighters, they were also political pawns. In ancient Rome, power and politics often intersected in the arena. Some gladiators even used their fame to climb the political ladder. But if you think your political career is rough now, try getting elected in ancient Rome when your job was fighting for your life in front of a bloodthirsty mob. In Rome, the arena wasn't just about blood and sweat. It was a spectacle with political implications. Gladiators, while largely seen as mere entertainment, were used by the wealthy and powerful as tools to gain favor with the masses. The Colosseum was one of the most effective propaganda machines of the Roman Empire, and gladiators were its star performers. The emperors, senators, and other elite figures understood this dynamic well. The more brutal and exciting the games, the more popular the politician hosting them became. They didn't need to do much besides open the gates and let the blood spill. But what if you could do more than just provide the show? What if you, as a gladiator, could capitalize on your fame and make your way into the corridors of power? This is where the political gladiators came in. Some gladiators, particularly those who gained significant fame in the arena, used their status to push into the political spotlight. After all, in a society where status was everything, being a public figure could open doors that would otherwise be shut. If you were known for surviving the arena time and time again, your name could get you meetings with the right people, and maybe, just maybe, a ticket to higher office. But Rome wasn't an easy place to climb the political ladder. If you wanted power, you had to play the game, and you had to do it well. Take, for instance, the case of some famous gladiators who became politicians. These men weren't just skilled fighters, they were also strategic. They knew how to win the crowd and how to use that popularity to their advantage. The arena was their stage, and every fight was an audition for something greater. A gladiator who earned the favor of the masses could leverage that admiration into political capital, using their fame to influence the people who would ultimately decide their political fate. But of course, the path to political success for a gladiator wasn't easy. Unlike modern politicians who can run campaigns and give speeches, gladiators had to prove themselves through bloodshed. Their entire public persona was based on their survival in the arena. Every swing of their sword, every breath they took, was scrutinized by the mob. If they weren't entertaining enough, or worse, if they showed any sign of weakness, there was no chance of climbing the ranks. You had to be the perfect combination of fierce warrior and crowd pleaser. Only then could you hope to transform your status as a gladiator into political power. In ancient Rome, power was often about spectacle, and the Colosseum was the perfect place to cultivate it. The crowd wasn't just there for the fight, they were there for the show, and the politicians knew it. By aligning themselves with popular gladiators, the powerful could use the games to solidify their own status. But even the most famous gladiator couldn't guarantee success outside the arena. The real challenge came when they tried to navigate the complex and cutthroat world of Roman politics. Here, a sword wasn't enough. Politics was a game of alliances, favors, and ruthless backstabbing. But even with these challenges, the allure of power was undeniable. Some gladiators managed to gain enough popularity and clout to move into the political sphere. There was a certain kind of respect that came with surviving the arena, and that respect could be wielded just as effectively as a sword. By surviving the brutal gladiatorial battles and then using that fame to push into the political elite, these gladiators didn't just survive, they thrived. They became the ultimate symbols of Roman resilience and strength, the living proof that a fighter could rise above the dirt of the arena to hold the highest seats of power. Still, no gladiator could forget their roots. Even if they made it to the Senate or some other political office, they were always a gladiator at heart. Their fame, their name, and their rise to power had been built in the very place where they fought for survival. And in a way, that made them more dangerous to their political rivals. A gladiator who could win the arena's blood-soaked battles had already proven themselves capable of winning any fight, whether physical or political. They knew how to turn public opinion in their favor, how to use their popularity to manipulate the crowds, and how to climb the ladder with each victory. In the end, the political gladiator was a rare breed, but they were a reminder of the true power of the arena. In Rome, fame and power could be carved out with a sword and blood, and in a city that lived and breathed for spectacle, those who survived the Colosseum often had the best chance of securing a place in the halls of power. But of course, that was always a gamble. For every gladiator who rose to political heights, there were countless others who never made it out alive, their names lost to history, their dreams of power buried beneath the sands of the arena. Yes, women were gladiators too. They didn't get the same recognition as their male counterparts, but they still fought for survival. Imagine the shock on the crowd's face when a woman steps into the arena. It's a spectacle in itself, and for these women, the fight wasn't just about survival. It was about proving they could do it just as well as the men. In ancient Rome, the arena was a male-dominated space, a battleground where only the strongest, most brutal fighters could hope to survive. But in this violent, testosterone-fueled world, there were a handful of women who defied the odds and proved that the same strength, courage, and tenacity that defined male gladiators could reside in women as well. The very idea of a woman stepping into the Colosseum to fight for her life was enough to shock and scandalize Roman society, where women were expected to stay in the background, playing roles as wives, mothers, or daughters, not warriors. Yet some women defied these societal norms, stepping into the blood-soaked sands of the arena to fight for their place, not only in the arena, but also in history. These women gladiators, often referred to as gladiatrices, were not as common as their male counterparts, but they were still a significant part of the gladiatorial world. They were often brought into the games by the same means as men, either as slaves, prisoners of war, or criminals. Yet some fought of their own volition, seeking freedom, fame, or simply the thrill of combat. The Colosseum wasn't just a place of brutal spectacle for these women. It was their battleground for proving that they were every bit as capable of fighting as any man. And in doing so, they shattered the societal expectations that confined them, taking on the same risks as their male counterparts, with one major difference. They had to fight not just for survival, but for respect. The crowd's reaction to these women was always mixed. Some spectators were fascinated, even captivated, by the idea of a woman stepping into the arena. Others were outraged, seeing it as an affront to Roman masculinity. Women weren't supposed to be fighters. They were supposed to be objects of admiration, not warriors who bled and died for sport. The audience's opinion was divided, and the pressure on these female gladiators was immense. They weren't just fighting to survive. They were fighting to change perceptions, to prove that they were just as capable of handling the violence of the arena as their male counterparts. To survive, a woman gladiator had to be not only physically strong, but mentally tough as well. The expectations on them were higher. If a male gladiator lost a fight, it was expected. If a woman lost, it could be viewed as a greater disgrace. They were fighting not just for their own lives, but for the chance to break the mold of what Roman society expected of women. They were saying, "We belong here." In every swing of the sword, every step in the arena, they were challenging a deeply entrenched social order. But it wasn't just about the physical fight. These women had to face the societal and cultural backlash that came with defying Roman gender norms. They were often considered to be symbols of moral decay, their presence in the arena seen as a sign of the collapse of traditional Roman values. Yet despite this, some women rose to fame as gladiators. The most famous example is the female gladiator who fought in the 1st century AD during the reign of Emperor Domitian. These women fought just as fiercely as men, sometimes even outperforming their male counterparts in battle. For the women gladiators who survived, the rewards were great, though far fewer than for men, while the elite of Roman society didn't usually offer them much in terms of fame, wealth, or opportunity after their fighting days were over. There were some instances where women gained enough recognition in the arena to secure their freedom, or at least a place in Roman society. The fact that they were able to win battles, even in the face of constant ridicule and rejection, spoke volumes about their skill and determination. The women who made it big were often those who combined not only strength, but flair. They knew how to fight, but they also knew how to captivate the audience, to leave a lasting impression in the arena. In many ways, their performance had to be more than just about victory. It had to be about spectacle, about proving to everyone that they were not to be underestimated. These women were breaking barriers in ways that most people in Roman society could not even imagine. They had to fight not only in the arena, but against the very culture that sought to confine them. They were pioneers in a brutal, unforgiving world where only the strongest survived, and in the end, they earned the right to stand alongside their male counterparts as equals, proving that courage and strength are not defined by gender. In the end, the story of the female gladiators is one of defiance, resilience, and courage. They stepped into the arena to fight for their place in a world that was not designed for them, and in doing so, they made history. They proved that warriors come in all forms, and the spirit of a gladiator is not defined by the body they inhabit, but by the heart and will to fight. The gladiator lifestyle doesn't exactly leave time for romance. Your lover is the Colosseum, but every so often, a gladiator might find themselves entangled in a bit of forbidden love. Unfortunately, those love stories rarely end well, especially when your significant other has to watch you die in front of thousands of people. In the harsh, brutal world of the gladiator, there's no place for tenderness, no room for sweet moments shared over a warm meal. The arena demands everything from you: your body, your strength, your will to survive. Your lover, if you have one, is the arena itself, with its blood-soaked sands, roaring crowds, and the constant reminder that death is never far away. Every battle you fight, every moment you survive, is just another step toward your inevitable end. And yet, somehow, even in the bloodbath of the Colosseum, some gladiators find a spark of affection, a connection that transcends the brutality of their lives. But that love is fleeting. In the world of gladiators, love is a luxury, something you can't afford to indulge in when you're too busy preparing for the next fight, worrying about whether your next match will be your last. The days blend together, filled with sweat, pain, and the constant pressure to perform for the crowd. Every fight is a gamble, and you're betting your life on each swing of the sword. But for a brief moment, in between the violence and the struggle, you might find someone who makes your heart beat a little faster, someone who looks beyond the blood-streaked armor and sees the person beneath. That connection is rare, but when it happens, it's everything. It's often a quiet kind of love, hidden away in the corners of the gladiator barracks, where whispered words and stolen glances are the only things that keep you going between the fights. A touch, a word of encouragement, is all you need to feel human again in a world that has stripped away your humanity. But love in the arena isn't without its complications. Your partner could be another gladiator fighting in the same brutal contest, or they could be someone from outside the arena, a servant, a noblewoman, or even a fellow slave. But no matter who they are, their place in your life is precarious. The arena is a place where death is always looming, and no matter how strong your bond, it cannot protect you from the violence that awaits in the ring. And then there's the pain of watching your lover fight, knowing that the very thing that keeps you alive, the fight, is also the thing that could take them from you. Every time you see them step into the arena, you hold your breath, hoping they'll survive, hoping they'll make it through the fight. But deep down, you know that the odds are against them, just like they're against you. A fatal blow can come at any moment, and all you can do is watch from the sidelines, powerless to stop it. The worst part? Knowing that if you fall in battle, your lover will have to watch it. They'll be there, in the crowd, witnessing your death as part of the show. Gladiators don't get romantic send-offs. There's no moment of peace, no whispered goodbye. Your death is just another spectacle, another part of the drama that unfolds in front of the bloodthirsty mob. Your lover might cry, they might scream, but in the end, they're just like everyone else, spectators in a world that has no room for love. And yet, for all the heartache, for all the uncertainty, there's something incredibly powerful about the brief moments of connection. A kiss before the fight, a touch of the hand after the match, the promise that somehow, in the midst of all the chaos, there's someone who sees you as more than just a gladiator. Even in a life defined by blood and violence, a love, no matter how fleeting, gives you something to hold on to. It makes the pain, the suffering, and the endless battles feel worth it, even if only for a moment. But ultimately, love in the gladiator's world is a cruel illusion. You can't protect the one you love when you're both trapped in a system designed to tear you apart. The gladiator's life doesn't leave room for happily ever afters. It leaves room for fights, for blood, for survival. And when your love is tied to the same arena that takes away everything else, you know that nothing is certain, not even the love you share. As the fight wears on and the final moments of your battle approach, it becomes clear. There is no escaping the arena's grip. And when your love watches you fall, it's not just your body that dies in the sand. It's the last thread of connection you had to the world outside. But that's the life of a gladiator. It's about survival. It's about the fight. And in the end, you're just one more body in the dirt, with no one left to remember you but the blood-stained sand beneath your feet. So what happens when a gladiator dies? Are they remembered? The answer is complicated. Some gladiators became legends, but most were forgotten. The Colosseum is full of blood and history, but very few gladiators got a legacy worth mentioning. Most of them left nothing but a few broken bones and a dead body. The gladiator's life was brutal, fleeting, and often tragic. They fought for survival, for glory, and sometimes for freedom. But the truth is, most gladiators were mere tools of the Roman entertainment machine. Once their usefulness was over, they were discarded, forgotten as quickly as the sand that absorbed their blood. In a world that prized spectacle over humanity, a gladiator's legacy was often as short-lived as their life in the arena. Yet every so often, a gladiator would rise above the dirt and the blood, becoming something more than just a fighter. The lucky few who survived long enough to make a name for themselves were the ones who became legends. These gladiators didn't just fight, they captivated the crowd, left their mark on the Colosseum, and somehow, despite the odds, turned their brutal existence into something worth remembering. They were not just gladiators, they were symbols of defiance, of strength, and sometimes of rebellion. They became heroes in the eyes of the public, even if their lives were marked by violence and suffering. Their names lived on in stories, songs, and the memories of the people who had witnessed their glory. But for every Spartacus, every legendary fighter who dared to rebel, there were thousands of others who died without so much as a whispered word in their honor. They were the nameless ones, the forgotten soldiers of Rome's blood-soaked empire. These gladiators fought for years, but when they fell in the arena, no one cared to remember their names. The Colosseum, with its grand spectacle, moved on to the next act, and the stories of those who died went untold. Even for the most skilled and famous gladiators, the legacy wasn't guaranteed. A hero in the arena might win dozens of battles, but in the end, they were still just a slave, a prisoner, or a pawn in the game of Roman politics. If a gladiator was lucky enough to survive long enough to be freed, they might enjoy a brief moment of fame, but it was often short-lived. Some gladiators, like the famous Spartacus, became symbols of rebellion, but for most, their freedom came with no fanfare. They left the arena, but the world they entered was indifferent to their past struggles. The glory that they earned with their blood was quickly forgotten by the very society that once cheered their name. For those who weren't lucky enough to survive long enough to gain freedom, their legacies were even more grim. The sands of the Colosseum absorbed their blood, and within a matter of days, they were replaced by another gladiator, eager to prove themselves. These fighters, who had known only pain, violence, and death, were buried without ceremony, their names lost to time. There was no one to mourn them, no one to speak their names in remembrance. In a society where life was cheap and spectacle was everything, the death of a gladiator meant nothing more than a change in the lineup for the next show. Yet despite the fleeting nature of their existence, some gladiators did manage to leave behind more than just a body. Those who had the courage to fight, not just for survival, but for something greater, could sometimes make a lasting impact. Gladiators like the famous Spartacus, who led a revolt against Rome itself, left behind more than just memories of their battles. They became symbols of resistance, of defiance against a system that saw them as nothing more than disposable entertainment. The memory of Spartacus lived on long after his death, not as a gladiator, but as a legend, one who fought not just for his life, but for the freedom of all those like him. For the others, those who didn't make it, the Colosseum would eventually forget them. Their lives, reduced to mere acts of violence and struggle, would fade into the shadows of history. And yet, even in their silence, the gladiators left something behind, a legacy of resistance, of survival, and of the raw power of the human spirit. The story of the gladiator is a story of life on the edge of death, of people who, in their brief time in the arena, fought for something more than just their own survival. They fought for their place in the world, even if that place was nothing more than a fleeting memory. And though the sands of the arena may have washed away their blood, the echoes of their struggles still resonate today. The story of the gladiator is not just one of violence and death, but also of resilience, defiance, and the eternal fight for survival. Gladiators may be a thing of the past, but their influence lingers on. From modern-day combat sports to reality TV, the Gladiator legacy is still with us. So the next time you're watching a UFC fight or a dramatic TV show, remember, there's a little bit of the Colosseum in everything we watch. The concept of gladiatorial combat has evolved, but the core principles are still present in many of the most popular forms of entertainment today. At its essence, the gladiatorial fight was about spectacle, human endurance, and the raw tension of life and death battles. Fast forward to the modern world, and combat sports like UFC, boxing, and professional wrestling have become the new arenas where athletes battle not just for victory, but for fame, wealth, and the adoration of the crowd. The parallels are impossible to ignore. The tension of the crowd, the anticipation of violence, and the unpredictable outcome all mimic the same atmosphere that once existed in the Colosseum. The gladiators' fight may have been for survival, but in today's world, athletes fight for much of the same reasons: glory, entertainment, and the chance to be remembered. Combat sports are a direct descendant of the gladiator games, where fighters step into the ring, cage, or arena, knowing that they could leave it broken, bruised, or even dead. The audience watches with bated breath, the cheers and jeers rising with each punch or kick. Fighters like Conor McGregor or Ronda Rousey, with their larger-than-life personas and legendary battles, are modern-day gladiators in their own right. They don't fight for their freedom like the gladiators of old, but they fight for something just as important: their place in history, their legacy, and the undying love or hate of the crowd. In this way, combat sports have resurrected the gladiator tradition, wrapped in a more commercialized package, but still tethered to the original idea: survival through performance. But it's not just sports where we see the gladiators' influence. In the world of entertainment, reality TV has picked up the torch. Shows like Survivor, Big Brother, and The Challenge have created their own modern-day arenas, where contestants battle for fame, money, and the chance to be remembered. Just like in the Colosseum, the audience becomes part of the spectacle, watching as participants fight, argue, and struggle to outlast each other. These shows thrive on the same elements that made gladiatorial combat so compelling: conflict, drama, and the anticipation of who will survive and who will fall. Even television dramas and movies, especially those set in ancient or dystopian settings, owe a lot of their intensity to the gladiator model. Series like Game of Thrones, Spartacus, and Vikings capture the bloodshed, betrayal, and the relentless pursuit of power that were hallmarks of the gladiator's life. The characters in these shows are often cast into brutal circumstances where survival is their only objective. Whether it's a battle for a kingdom or a fight for their life in a foreign land, the tension and drama feel familiar because at their core, they are modern interpretations of the gladiatorial ethos. The Colosseum might be gone, but its spirit lives on in these epic battles. Even in the more subtle corners of our lives, the gladiator influence is there. The rise of competitive gaming, where players face off in virtual arenas for cash prizes and titles, is another modern take on the gladiator tradition. The online audience watches the players in real time, cheering them on or calling for their defeat. Players enter these virtual arenas with the same sense of intensity that gladiators once did, competing for status and the adoration of millions, if not for life, then for digital immortality. It's a digital Colosseum where instead of swords, players wield controllers, but the stakes, adulation, and fame are still the same. The modern gladiator's influence is also evident in the world of fitness. The rise of boot camps, obstacle course racing, think Spartan races, and extreme sports culture carries echoes of gladiatorial training. Participants train for these grueling events with the same intensity that a gladiator would have used to prepare for battle. The focus isn't just on skill, it's about pushing the limits of human endurance, testing one's ability to survive, and striving for something greater than just a medal or a trophy. These events, like the gladiator games of old, are designed to showcase the human body's incredible capacity to endure pain and struggle in the face of almost insurmountable odds. And then there's the more metaphorical use of the gladiator in popular culture. The term gladiator is often used to describe someone who fights for a cause, someone who battles adversity with determination, whether in the boardroom, the courtroom, or on the political stage. Gladiators are frequently portrayed as symbols of resistance, perseverance, and the will to overcome, no matter the odds. Modern-day leaders, activists, and entrepreneurs have adopted the gladiator persona, symbolizing their struggle to overcome the obstacles in their path and emerge victorious. So while the Colosseum may have fallen silent, the essence of the gladiator, its thrill, its intensity, and its primal appeal continues to shape the world around us. The fight may no longer be for life and death in the blood-stained sands of ancient Rome, but it remains embedded in the games we play, the shows we watch, and the battles we fight for fame, power, and survival. The modern gladiator might not face lions, but they still face the crowd, and in the end, it's the crowd's approval that still counts. As you lie in bed tonight, perhaps reflecting on the brutal lives of these ancient warriors, remember that while the Colosseum has long since crumbled, its spirit still echoes in the world around us. Gladiators may no longer fight for their lives in front of roaring crowds, but their legacy lives on in every sport, every reality show, and in every challenge we face that requires us to dig deep and give everything we've got. We might not be fighting lions or fellow gladiators, but we all have our own arenas to face, our own battles to fight. And like the gladiators of old, we too must find strength, resilience, and a bit of showmanship to make it through. Because in the end, it's not just about surviving. It's about making our lives, our struggles, and our victories something worth remembering. So tonight, as you snuggle into your cozy bed, remember to be grateful for the comforts of modern life, the safety of your home, and the luxury of not having to step into an arena where your life is nothing more than a spectacle. And when the time comes for you to face your own challenges, may you do so with the same courage and determination that made those gladiators legends long after their final fight. Sleep well, knowing that, just like them, you can rise to face whatever comes next, because in your own way, you're a gladiator too. Okay, good night.